How's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Oh, it's been a little while. Well, we have something interesting today, I promise. Today, we're going to be testing a number of materials against airsoft BBs. Specifically, this M16A1 clone, which looks lovely, might I add. But, why? You might ask why we're testing various 3D print materials against airsoft BBs. And really what it comes down to at the end of the day is that this is a great test of impact resistance. We're going to be shooting this, I want to say barrel length, because like on real firearms, that's how you would determine velocity, but barrel length doesn't really determine velocity on an airsoft gun. We have about a 400 FPS gun. We're going to be shooting with 0.2 gram BBs. I don't know, that's my headline around, and we're going to do some, essentially this is going to be impact testing. We're going to be doing direct impact tests. And I'm doing this for a number of reasons. A, I think it can help us learn a little bit more about the filaments we use for real firearms. But B, I'm bringing it back into airsoft, and I think that learning about these filaments and finding the right one to use will be really helpful when it comes to designing airsoft 3D printed parts, which, honestly, as someone who just started looking into it, the scene for 3D printed airsoft guns seems less developed than the scene for real 3D printed firearms, which I find very funny. You would imagine that it would be the other way around, but no, it's not. It seems to be the 3D printed airsoft guns aren't very far along, so hopefully this video helps a little bit. This test is going to be of the Carbon X EZPCCF, so it's a carbon fiber polycarbonate blend. This stuff's pretty rigid, so I'm very curious how it'll hold up to impact testing. I guess let's find out. Seems to be totally fine. This is Overture PETG. This is what we're going to be testing here. This stuff's the clear one. I have some black PETG, but I don't think the color's going to affect this testing. Just preemptively, I have tested PETG in this similar situation before. This stuff does not fare well. There's a reason we don't use it for real firearms, and we're not using it for airsoft either. It actually seems to have survived that first hit, which I'm really surprised by. It might just be due to the fact that we have a hard backing on this, but it actually, I'm going to pull it out here for a sec. It's cracked, but oh no, it's cracked pretty bad. I do not expect this to survive the next couple. So the other half of that's on the ground. As you can see, that cracked pretty good there. And from what's on the ground here, yeah, this stuff cracked pretty good too. Yep. Honestly, that did better than I expected it to from some of my previous testing with PETG. That might have just been because it had a solid backing, but that's a fail. This here is Polymaker's PA6GF. This is a glass-filled nylon blend of theirs. I've had fantastic luck with this for not only real firearms, but also airsoft-related stuff. I fully expect this to survive. This had a couple bumps on it that I had to cut off, but typically this stuff prints great. It is one of the only truly warp-free nylons. You print this stuff at 30 degrees Celsius on the bed, and it works excellent. Let's see if it survives. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, this guy is totally fine. That impact is right there. No cracks, a little nick, but nothing particularly significant. Let's hit it some more. Well, we hit it with 2, and this guy fell down. These are the shots here. Yeah, just little light marks on here. Nothing to be concerned about. This stuff, I imagine, can take hundreds and hundreds of rounds. We'll finish off the 5 though, retape, see how it goes. So just for curiosity's sake here, I shot this a lot of times. Some of these hit the concrete, but I shot it in excess of... Oh, would you look at that? It did crack. How interesting. Look at that. Alright, we'll take a look at it. Yeah, so I shot that a bit excessively. I honestly thought it was going to be totally fine, but no, we did in fact get a crack here along the top. That could be any number of things. I'm wondering if it's possibly because I didn't anneal this sample prior to testing it, which I probably should have done, but honestly, I kind of fully expected it to survive even without annealing. Interesting. But still, this fared a lot better. I mean, you can just see all the marks on here. This fared quite a bit better than any of the other samples thus far. So it's a little later now. Kind of dark, but the next test is going to be this. I believe this is Hatchbox ABS. Honestly, I'm not a very big fan of ABS, and I honestly don't know what to expect of it. It kind of prints terribly, but we'll see how our little test here goes. Oh, it's right there. Look at that. It's actually just a very mild mark. It's honestly really impressive. I thought it would do worse than that. Alright, so it fell off, but color me impressed there. That is totally fine. Isn't that pretty impressive? Yeah, well, didn't crack. I'm gonna hit it with 10 more, so we hit our 20. That was 10. I'll hit it with 10 more, and then we'll call this. I'm thinking this actually might be a pass. Very surprising to me. It fell again, but honestly, I'm gonna call it there. It clearly is not having any kind of separation or deformation or anything. Honestly, really impressed. I thought the weak layer adhesion of 3D printed ABS would really be a downfall to this, but that's genuinely quite impressive. Honestly, really. You can see it there pretty good in the glare. That's pretty cool. You can really see it when I tilt it. You can see the little dents that got left, but nothing bad at all. I'm trying to block that light so you can see me. The next test here is this TPU. This is some Overture TPU. Oh, I forget what the diameter is. It's pretty soft stuff, though. I mean, you can see it's pretty flexible. I think this is going to be totally fine. I will be stunned if this manages to take any amount of damage from a little BB. So, let's find out. It's really hard to tell when you hit it because it doesn't make a noise like... But, oh man, I need like the flashlight. Oh, here we go. Okay. But... surface look here. Oh, here we go. The dents are right here. Pull off the tape a little so we can see. Yeah, that's you can faintly see the little marks there. I hit it twice. I thought I missed the first one, so I shot it again. Yeah, we're just gonna dump a bunch of BBs on this just to prove that it's pretty good. Well, I ran out of BBs, but I think that's safe to say that this thing is essentially unaffected by them. But yeah, you can see the little marks. Honestly, I imagine it's just little fragments of BB more than anything. I mean, it's so flexible, I would be stunned if it had any results. Alright, the next test here is good old-fashioned eSun PLA+. So a lot of people, I think, have the belief that PLA and PLA Plus aren't particularly strong or impact resistant, because impact resistance is kind of a subsection of how strong a material is. Just because something is strong doesn't mean it's impact resistant. But PLA is actually shockingly impact resistant and strong, and I fully expect to pass this test. I missed the first shot, so I had to hit it a second time here.
Let's find that mark. I don't see it. It might be under this tape. I don't see it there. Is it up here? Wow, did it really just work so well that it is invisible? It is possible. We're gonna keep hitting it. Maybe I missed it. I don't think I missed it. I heard the noise. The first shot missed. I don't think the second one missed though. We're gonna hit it again and see if it goes better. Well, honestly, I'm a little shocked by that, but we're gonna take a look here. So it appears we got a crack. Yeah, it mostly has though, which is really surprising. Why did my light turn off? There it goes. Take a quick look at it. I can't even really tell which side we're hitting. It must have been this side, that little marker. Oh yeah, there's a couple BB marks. There you can see one right there. But the BB marks are really minimal on here, and honestly, I'm really shocked that this broke, and I dare call it a fluke because I'm honestly really surprised. But test results are test results, and we take them for what they are, not what we want. Okay, now that testing is concluded, let's discuss the results of all of this. Let me begin by saying that this test wasn't super scientific, and that just because a material failed this test doesn't mean it's a bad material. Every material has its applications, and at this moment, I am trying to specifically find a material for this use, right? Just because your favorite material didn't survive this test, that doesn't mean it's bad material. There's certain applications for everything. Use the right material for the right job. Each one of these squares is a 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter square with 4 millimeters depth. The reason I did that is because the stock I wanted to 3D print had 4 millimeters depth, so I thought I might as well do that so I could find out what material, would break it. Also, I propped each of these against that tough cinder block, which allowed them to have no give. So that kind of makes the impacts a little tougher than, free floating in your hand or on a body or anywhere where it's not quite the same. But the results are still valuable. Let me again remind you of the filaments that we're using in this test. This right here is Overture TPU. This is Hatchbox ABS. This is eSun PLA Plus. This is Overture PETG. This one's always a mouthful. Carbon X EZ polycarbonate carbon fiber. Oh my god, that's a lot. And this is Polymaker Polymax PA6 glass filled. Get that out of the way. Let's talk about the indisputable losers of this test. And that would be the PETG and the polycarbonate. Again, that does not mean these are bad materials. PETG is a super useful material. It prints really nice like PLA, but it has the thermal threshold where you're not going to melt in the sun. I know some people don't like to believe that PLA can melt in the sun, but it has happened to me multiple times. You can absolutely melt your PLA just being outside. Out in the Southwest, it's pretty hot, so it really is an issue. But for now, PETG, yeah, it has a good, has good thermal properties, but it is clearly pretty brittle. I believe on the first shot we cracked it, and it just broke and shattered and broke. Honestly, I did some testing earlier using same brand Overture PETG, but this one was black as opposed to the clear, and honestly the black PETG fared quite a bit worse. I'm curious what color additives they use and if they result in strength issues, because when I shot the black PETG, it shattered. I mean, it went into dust, millions of little pieces. You were not going to recover it. This one fared quite a bit better, but still clearly not well. This is clearly too brittle for this. This is also obviously why we don't use it on real firearms. A lot of people like to argue PETG is stronger than PLA, and in some ways it is. It's tensile strength, and there's other properties to it that it is, but its direct impact resistance, which is really what we're pretty much testing here, is clearly not as good as PLA. So, out of the way. Next is this Carbon X EZ PCCF. This stuff's so cool. This stuff prints really, really well for being an engineering grade material. It hasn't warped off my bed. The carbon fiber makes the details really nice and crispy. It's one of the most rigid materials I've ever seen. There's no flex, no give to it. It feels really premium to print. Unfortunately, it survived the first shot, which means it did a little better than PETG, but it broke in more than one places, which I would call a direct fail. I believe there's also some cracks. It's hard to see with the carbon fiber because, oh man, that texture looks so good. But I believe there's some cracks in this too. It didn't just break along the layer lines. And that is one thing to note, is that it's typically better for something to break solely along the layer lines. That means that you can design around layer lines. This failed, unfortunately, and it really didn't break cleanly along the layer lines. It more or less broke along the layer lines, but yeah. Polycarbonate is just too rigid to have the impact resistance that we need for this application, and that's really unfortunate because it's really cool stuff. It's also really expensive, so you might look out there. Next. This one surprised me. We're going to talk about the surprises here next. This, unfortunately, is the PA6 glass-filled nylon from Polymaker. This stuff is awesome. I have made AR-15, real firearm AR-15 lower receivers out of this stuff. This stuff is excellent. This stuff is super strong and typically has very, very good impact resistance. It is one of my favorite filaments to print. It prints really crispy with the glass fibers in it. Makes it really nice, and it's quite a bit cheaper than its carbon fiber relative to the PA6 carbon fiber filled filament, which is also excellent stuff and is a little bit stronger than this. I would be very curious to see how that fares in this test. I would imagine it would survive this. Granted, it survived the first impact totally fine, no marks. You can see the little itty bitty marks on here. It survived, oh man, at least more than a dozen before breaking right at this point. Like I said earlier, this is a worst case scenario. This test was done with a 400 FPS, 20-inch barreled M16. I know barrel length doesn't matter for an airsoft gun, but a 400 FPS, 0.2 gram BPs. So that's pretty hot shooting, and for that to happen well over a dozen rounds in, that could be some weak layer adhesion due to my printer. That could be any number of things. I will still consider this a pass. It broke mostly along the layer lines and only in one place after a good couple shots, whereas the polycarbonate broke after only 5, and it broke in like at least 3 places. I will still call this a pass. The other side to this is I ripped this right off my printer and tested it because I was quite frankly impatient and I wanted to test it, and I kind of gave it the worst case scenario because realistically speaking, you are supposed to anneal this stuff as well as expose it to moisture, and I did not do that. So I kind of gave this thing its worst chance, and it still did really quite good. Almost as good as this, the eSun PLA Plus. This is the go-to standard for printing for most people. You might ask a question, why did I not test normal PLA for this test? And simply that comes down to, for any real outdoor application, you run into the heat issue with normal PLA almost immediately, and PLA Plus is almost better in every single way, and the price is basically the same. Just get eSun PLA Plus, or any, I really recommend Polymakers. Polymaker stuff's a little more pricey, but it's very excellent too. But eSun's also really solid. I was very surprised to find that this cracked along this layer line. I did some testing earlier with one of these pieces not taped to the cinder block the way that these tests were, and I shot it probably 50 plus times and it didn't break. So I was very surprised to see this shatter on this layer line, but like I said, we have created a worst case scenario here. We're on the cinder block wall, we're shooting a hot gun, we're shooting from only about 10 feet away, we're pretty close, and clearly it didn't quite hold up. I think for almost most use cases, this stuff's really good. The only issue you're going to run into is thermal, like I said. That's why I would use lighter colors to print in, because they won't absorb the heat as much. I would also print things that aren't thin. I know it's kind of weird to explain, but the higher thermal mass you can make something, the less likely it is to melt. I've printed plenty of real firearms out of this PLA Plus, and it has been great. But you do always have to worry a little bit about the thermal issues, and that's why this is so great, because this doesn't have the thermal issues that this does. And that's why I really wish PETG was so good. I really wish PETG was better, because it also would not have the thermal issues the PLA does, and it still prints really nice, but unfortunately it is far too brittle. I digress. On to the, by far, the most surprising result of this test to me. The Hatchbox ABS survived this test with flying colors. It's got a couple dimples in it from the BBs, but wow, color me impressed. I really thought that the layer adhesion would not be good enough with printed ABS. I understand injection molded ABS is a different story, but this is 3D printed ABS. And I really thought this would break along the layer lines on the first shot, if I'm honest with you, but nope. Very surprisingly to me, this survived the whole gauntlet. I probably shot this well over a dozen times, and it held up quite well. Very impressed with it. ABS comes with quite a few downsides. It warps like a motherfucker. It just prints kind of gross. I really don't like printing this stuff. I had to write ABS because I don't want to get confused with the PLA, although they do look notably different. The ABS does look quite a bit yellower than the PLA. I don't like printing ABS. I don't really like ABS, but this is a very surprising result to me. I'm really considering getting some ASA for this application because ASA is kind of just ABS but better in every way, and it really isn't that expensive for those who are uninformed. ABS, I mean, ASA has most of the properties of ABS. It does like to warp, but it has that pretty high temperature. It has the same strength properties of ABS typically, but it is UV resistant, which is pretty cool, and it doesn't off-gas as much styrene to my knowledge. That is one of the big issues with this stuff, is when you print it, it smells terrible and it gives you a headache. Really don't enjoy printing this stuff, like I said, but I'm genuinely stunned by this result. This is super impressive. And then last but not least, honestly, one of the least surprising results of this test is the TPU. This is the Overture TPU. This stuff's really flexible. Truthfully, for most things, I do too flexible. I'm not surprised at all this survived. Yeah, you could have shot this all day. I don't think it physically can crack. But it has some minor marks and minor deformations. But this is a elastomer. This stuff is not going. Stuff just isn't brittle. The stuff isn't going to shatter. You will not break this. And its thermal threshold's actually pretty good. I mean, it's got to get 20 Celsius higher than PLA to melt. And although that doesn't sound like a lot, in the real world, that bumps it right into the point where it's pretty much fine for even being in a car and whatnot. All right. So, ultimate conclusion. For any of these applications, probably don't use these two. The rest of these are probably fine for the most part, This one, clearly, you can do flexible, cool stuff with. I would be really curious to try a higher diameter TPU. I've been looking to find some on Amazon, and I'm starting to think that maybe they're not available on Amazon. I might have to look at a different retailer to see if I can find a higher diameter TPU, because I have not found it. And I think it'd be really cool stuff to have a less flexible TPU that I could do, grips and accessories with that is pretty much indestructible. It's damn near bulletproof, which is pretty cool. In conclusion, I would argue that these four, the PLA Plus ABS, glass-filled nylon, and the TPU, are totally fine to do for this application, and I would say these two are on the wall of shame for this application. Mind you, these are really cool filaments. You can do all sorts of cool stuff with these, but not for this. And I guess that would lead me to the conclusion, which is pick the material for the job, right? This all started because I was getting back into airsoft, and I wanted to 3D print some parts for this Frankenstein monster gun I'm building, which I will show momentarily. I printed a stock, and then I kind of broke it on accident. I was like, man, that was weird. That PETG I used was kind of brittle, and I was kind of surprised by that. And PETG is one of those filaments I've been wanting to use for a really long time, and I haven't found a good use for it. And I thought airsoft's the perfect use for it. But then I tested it. This is the this is the aftermath here. Yeah, clearly this did not hold up to the task. This is that black PETG I was talking about earlier. That really was super brittle. I really think this stuff might be even more brittle than the clear stuff. This is a little bit different, a bit of a result because we tested the clear stuff against that cinder block, so it was a little more rigid. But yeah, I think the first shot I put through this, it just went clean through. So I've been debating, the uses of parts, and like I said, the application dictates the material. So here is the ever iconic Lombi Killer. That is not a joke. This bad boy right here really does say Lombi Killer. It also says the famous line of here where it says Der Disciples Together Andy gave. Also this shit, yeah, trust me, I know this gun is almost to the point of irony. This shit's ridiculous. When I got this, I knew this shit was ridiculous, but I have Frankenstein this thing into actually a pretty decent rifle now. Point being, there's quite a few 3D printed things on here, and now due to this testing, I am debating the material choice I've used on certain things. Three main parts here I'm going to talk about. The buttstock here, so this is actually a real steel firearm handguard with a 3D printed, you can kind of see it in there, a 3D printed barrel nut in there. That's what that white is. And a 3D printed muzzle device here, which I think is pretty cool. This is airsoft, for the record. It's not real. It is made in China with a lovely, hideous Punisher skull. Anyway, so after this testing, I will not debate that this stock would probably benefit quite a bit from being ABS or ASA. I'm probably going to go ASA due to the UV resistance. I think that'd be really cool. I'll have some testing on ASA maybe a little bit later. But at the moment, it's PETG. And we, learned that doesn't hold up super well. And I really think it would be beneficial to do ABS for a part like this. It's pretty big, believe it or not. So this actually prints 2 parts, and it's hollow on the inside. And the actual part that touched the print bed isn't really that much surface area. And I think we won't have the warping issues that are typically very present in ASA. Fingers crossed. No promises there, but yeah. Oh, there's a 4th 3D printed part in here too. It's the grip, but I'll talk about that in a sec. The barrel nut at the moment is printed out of PLA. I use PLA because I just have a lot of it, and I know it's strong enough for this application. Funnily enough, this might be a part I'm going to switch to either ABS, but the layer adhesion isn't quite where I want with ABS. It might end up PETG, it might end up glass-filled nylon. We will see. The walls are really thin on this because this barrel nut was originally designed to be made out of steel, but I designed my own to be 3D printed with the threads that match the airsoft receiver, which aren't the same as the real steel threads, to fit on this real steel handguard. Now, little things like this here, this is printed PLA, and I'm probably not going to change it, this grip right here. This has enough thermal mass to it that I don't expect it to melt from being in the sun, getting hot, getting to its thermal temperature. There's plenty of parts you can print out of PLA Plus that will be totally fine, and this is one of them. Same thing goes for this, really. This PLA Plus muzzle device here that I designed. I think it turned out pretty good. I'm probably going to retain this as PLA Plus because really it has enough thermal mass. I don't think it's going to melt.
Thanks for watching the video. Thanks for watching Additive Firearms. Thanks for subscribing. Hope it was interesting. Sorry, it's been a little while since I've uploaded, but I have some interesting things coming. This was a really long video, but I have a new AR-9 to show off. I have an Orca to show off. I have some stuff coming in the pipeline. I was busy, but I got some free time, got some cool stuff to show off. So thanks for sticking around. Appreciate it.